Well, hi, everybody. I'm back. and don't forget, if you are done having these videos emailed to you, let me know. Some of you just signed up through YouTube to be notified when a new video comes up. But if you are on the email list and you don't want to get the emails anymore, just let me know. I'm not going to be offended at all. Okay, I'm back after having a little hiatus here because I had company. I had a wonderful week with my sisters down here in Florida. We had a great time, and it's a wonderful thing to be grateful to God for your family and for good times, making memories. So for today, I thought of two other women in the Old Testament that I wanted to talk about, and they both involve the prophet Samuel in some way or another. And they're both told in the book of First Samuel. First Samuel is a book in the Old Testament which actually tells the life of the prophet Samuel, who was the very last prophet who was a judge in Israel. Remember, they had the judges, people like Deborah and, you know, Gideon, different people that were leading them. They were like military leaders, and they were also people that did arbitration and that kind of thing, and they didn't have a king, so they just had this series of judges, and some were good and some were bad. Samuel was a really, really good one, and he is a prophet at the end of that last period of judges. And at that point, then the Israelites want a king, because all the other nations have a king, and the only king they have is God, and they want an earthly king. And so God says, hey, if that's what you want, okay. And it's Samuel then that ushers in that new era. But we're going to go back in 1 Samuel to the very beginning of Samuel's life, and we're going to talk about his mother. And her name is Hannah. And later on, we're going to talk about another woman later on in the book of Samuel, and her name is Abigail. But in both cases, these women epitomize that old saying, behind every successful man is a strong, successful woman. Nowadays, we would say beside every person is a strong person. We don't have to be behind the scenes now as women, which is nice in our culture. But back then, of course, the woman was working behind the scenes. But in so many cases, people who are successful have a helpmate that is there beside them, that is helping them. And God gives us that as such a great gift. And Hannah, she's the woman behind Samuel because she's his mother. So the story of Hannah is a great story of faith, and it's a great story of God's timing and God's faithfulness, and so many other lessons that we can learn from this story of Hannah. And her story takes place in 1 Samuel chapter 1. So let me start right out with reading that, I think. The people in this story, there's a couple people that we need to know about that are involved in the story of Hannah. There's Elkanah, that's her husband. There's Peninnah, which is another wife of Elkanah. So they're both married to the same man. Eli, who is a priest in the temple, and his two sons. Let's see. Let me look up. I wrote their names down. Hopai and Hophni or something. Hophni and Phinehas. There you go. Hophni and Phinehas. So those are kind of the people that are involved in this. Try to remember too that Hannah, her name really means grace, where Peninnah means pearl. Okay, and Elkanah means, I think, man of God or something. I don't know. Anyway, let's do the introduction to this. In my Bible, by the way, it starts out there was a man named Elkanah. I want to look up, and I should have done this ahead of time, but I'll do it right now. 1 Samuel chapter 1 in the other version, in the NIV version. because I want to see what it says. Yeah, it says, there was a certain man. A certain man. I like that. I think that's interesting because it's not just any old man. God chooses people for certain reasons, you know? And there was a certain man named Elkanah. And it's not just any old man. This is a really important part of the history. So there was a certain man named Elkanah who lived in Ramah in the region of Zuph in the hill country of Ephraim. Okay, so he lives in Ephraim. Remember, that's Bethlehem area, right? That does not mean he's necessarily from that tribe. It means that he's a citizen of that area, okay? Because it says he was the son of Jeraham, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Zuph of Ephraim. We need to know that because he was the son of all these people, they give the genealogy, which probably doesn't mean that much to us. But what it's really saying here is, from what I looked up and read, for other people told me this, I didn't make it up myself, that, because I was wondering, why is all this listed? Like, what difference does it make? It indicates that he was a Levite. And remember, the Levites were from the family of Levi, who was a son of Israel, Jacob. And Jacob had his sons and his grandsons formed the 12 tribes of Israel. One of them was Levi. And the Levites were specifically called to take care of the religious duties, work in the temple, be in that field, in a way. They were specifically called to be the religious workers. So it's important that Elkanah is from that tribe of Levites. Important later in the story, right? Okay, so they give his genealogy, and they tell that he lived in Bethlehem. That's his citizenship, and they give his family line, and so on and so forth. Okay, now we are on verse 2. Elkanah had 2 wives, Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah did not. Doesn't mean all that much to us today, because some people have children and some people don't. But back then, children were the reason for women to be important. It was their duty to their husband. It was their status in the community. It was something that made them feel useful and wanted and productive, because it was all about the men, and what they did is give the children. And in fact, back then, if a man married someone and they did not produce children, according to the law, he was entitled to divorce them because they were barren. So barrenness was a big stigma in that day and age. And, you have to think of children were a sign of status for a man. They were also, because it was an agricultural kind of community, or grazing, animals or whatever, that the children were highly important in helping with the family business and so on. So the more children that someone had, the greater status they had in the community, and their wives were, that was an important thing for them. Having 2 wives, however, there's lots of people in the Bible who have multiple wives, right? This is not how God intended it to begin with, okay? He didn't strike them dead because they did it, because I think it was partially, again, so that they could create status, create a big family that would work and help out and so on and so forth. And to do that, having a couple of wives seemed practical to them. But that's not the way God intended it. He always intended one man, one woman. And we're going to see in this story why that might be true, because you can imagine, I can, as a woman, there would be a lot of jealousy here. Especially because one of Elkanah's wives had children and the other didn't. So I'm sure there was rivalry between them. There would have to be. So let's see what happens in this story. This is verse 3. Each year, Elkanah would travel to Shiloh to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of heaven's armies at the tabernacle. The priests of the Lord at that time were the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas. So Shiloh was the city. Jerusalem was kind of in the middle of the country. Then Ramah was above that, and then Shiloh north of that. And at this time, Shiloh was the center of the religious community, and that's where the tabernacle was. And so every year, this family, they were, you can tell they were very dedicated to their faith, because every year they went 3 times a year, as Jewish men were required. Okay, and I've mentioned this before, that they were required to go for 3 different religious celebrations. Okay, that was Passover and the Festival of Unleavened Bread, the Festival of Harvest, and the Festival of Shelters. So those 3 were the 3 festivals that men were required to go to. And of course, he took his wives along with him, and he went to this tabernacle where the priest there was Eli, and also his sons Hophni and Phinehas, who were not very nice, truthfully. But anyway, here we know that he must have been a man of God, because he wanted to follow, the traditions and religious ceremonies of the time. So every year he took his family and he went up to Shiloh for these celebrations. So let's see. The other thing I noticed was, I noticed they called it in this translation that he went to, it says he went to sacrifice to the Lord of Heaven's armies. The Lord of Heaven's armies. I thought, well, that's an odd way to address God, the Lord of Heaven's armies. What exactly does that mean? Well, in other translations, it's the Lord of hosts. So Elkanah, or Samuel, as he's writing this is the first time God is referred to in the Bible as the Lord of Heaven's armies, the Lord of hosts. And it's an indication of the understanding of the person writing this, and maybe even Elkanah himself, that God is a God of power, that he has a plan, and he has people that are, angels that will carry out that plan, and he has everything under control. He is mighty. Okay, it would be like if we said, mighty God, that kind of thing. He's not necessarily right here referring to that faithful shepherd or anything like that, that loving father. No, he's saying Lord of Heaven's armies. So that's the way Samuel, I'm assuming it's Samuel who wrote this. I don't know. I don't think we know for sure who wrote 1 Samuel, but it is possibly Samuel. It possibly could include writings from other prophets like Nathan and Gad, according to this reference. Okay, so anyway, here's the first indication, or the first time God is referred to in the scriptures as the Lord of Heaven's armies, or the Lord of hosts. Interesting. So each year, Elkanah would travel to Shiloh to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of Heaven's armies at the tabernacle. The priests of the Lord at that time were 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas. Now we're on to verse 4. On the days Elkanah presented his sacrifice, he would give portions of the meat to Peninnah and each of her children. So this is the meat that he's sacrificing. He gives 1 portion to Peninnah and 1 portion for each of her children. So she gets multiple portions of this. And though he loved Hannah, he would give her only 1 choice portion, because the Lord had given her no children. So he gives her only 1 portion, but notice he gives her a choice portion. He gives her the best part of the meat, He's trying to make up for the fact that she doesn't have children, and he's hoping that he can show her his love this way. I think that's nice of him, really. Loving, let's say. Okay? So, think about that, though. How would Peninnah feel about the fact? Now, she's got a bunch of kids, and she gets a bunch of portions. But it's Hannah, who has no children, that gets the best. Okay? In a way, Elkanah is setting up Hannah kind of like teacher's pet. Like if you notice that someone who is treated a little bit better than everybody else, the other people around them are jealous of that. And it creates a dissension, that Hannah is being treated really better than Peninnah, even though she gets more. Hannah gets the choice, because the next verse starts with the word so. And that means there's a reason why Peninnah feels the way she does. So, Peninnah would taunt Hannah and make fun of her because the Lord had kept her from having children. Peninnah's jealous because she knows Elkanah really kind of favors Hannah, even though Hannah doesn't have any children. It would seem to me Elkanah made a mistake here. Why didn't he just treat them both the same and then, be loving to Hannah? He didn't have to try to make up for it, that way, because in doing so, he created a situation where Hannah was really going to be, bullied, you might say. Okay, so Peninnah taunts her, kind of tries to get her back, because she doesn't have any kids, and that is a big social embarrassment at the time, not to have any children for a woman. It's very socially embarrassing, and she's really, really devastated by this. So Peninnah would taunt Hannah and make fun of her because the Lord had kept her from having children. Year after year, it was the same. Peninnah would taunt Hannah as they went into the tabernacle, and each time Hannah would be reduced to tears and would not even eat. This wasn't just a one-time deal here. This was year after year after year. From looking at that situation, you and I would automatically say, why are you doing this, God? Why don't you give her some kids? God has his timings. He has his reasons. He has these blessings, but he's going to do what he's going to do in his time that he knows is perfect. And for Hannah, this is a build-up. Year after year after year of being teased and taunted. And you still don't have any kids, and here we are again. Remember last year it was the same way. I can just imagine what Peninnah was saying all this time, And again, Elkanah kind of makes the situation worse in some ways. I mean, he's trying to be loving, but like a man, he's just not really doing very well. Verse 8 says, "Why are you crying, Hannah?" Elkanah would ask. "Why aren't you eating? Why be downhearted just because you have no children? You have me. Isn't that better than having 10 sons?" Really? I think Elkanah better shut up. Sometimes we say stupid things to people trying to make them feel better, It's a very good lesson to be learned from here, especially if someone's grieving or in sorrow or they've had a lot of bad things happen. The easy pat answer is not what you need to give them. You just need to be there for them and love them and say, "I'm here for you, no matter what," And Elkanah could have engaged Peninnah over to say, be kind to her. Let me love you both, Or he could have done so many different things, just standing by her, just supporting her, just listening to her and understanding. He said, "Hey, aren't I enough?" He's like the big man here, "Aren't I enough?" And I understand he's trying to reassure her in the only way he knows how, But he's kind of making a little muck of it here, He really, and I've done that. I've said the easy answer to someone, and afterwards I just want to bite my tongue, The easy answer when someone's hurting is not what they want to hear. Sometimes they don't even want you to quote the Bible verse to them. They just want you to say, "I love you and I'm here for you. Feel free to call me anytime and vent," I like that. But Elkanah doesn't say that. And so once, after a sacrificial meal at Shiloh, Hannah got up and went to pray. I'm going to stop there. We're not going to get into her prayer till next time. We've set the stage now for what's happening. And Hannah now is going to go to the Lord in prayer. I'm sure she's prayed before, but now she is going to get up and go right to the tabernacle, and she's really going to present her prayers before the Lord. And Sometimes it's like this. We pray, 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 but then all of a sudden we have a breaking point where we are down on our knees and really asking God to show himself in our lives. That's kind of where Hannah is right now. So we're going to continue her story in the next session. And until then, have a great day.